Under the oak tree. Maxi was awoken by the sound of firewood being thrown into the fireplace. Outside, it was already dark. She blinked and looked around the room. When she saw Riftan standing in front of the fire, she quickly tried to get up. But her body went limp when she felt the throbbing between her legs. She groaned quietly at the sharp ache. Hearing her, Riftan swiftly turned his head. He was dressed in a fresh black tunic and looked as if he had just finished bathing. "You're a light sleeper," Riftan said, a faint smile on his lips. Maxi shook her head. "I didn't even notice you getting up to wash. I wanted to wait till you were awake so we could bathe together, but I had to go interrogate those damned intruders." He walked toward the bed and planted a kiss on her bare shoulder. Blushing, Maxi looked up at him, with worry in her eyes. "You interrogated them?" "Yes. I even summoned a cleric to confirm their leader's identity." "And were his claims true?" Maxi asked cautiously. Riftan frowned. "He is a Lividonian noble." Maxi's head spun. Had she made a mistake? The situation might not have escalated so dangerously had she just allowed the man entry. As if he had read her thoughts, Riftan brushed a lock of hair from her face and kissed her cheek. But he lied about his claim to Kaisa. He wasn't the lord, but one of the lord's sons. When his half-brother was chosen as heir, he stole his family heirloom and fled to Whedon. I assume he was roaming around with his knights when he heard about the vast collection of treasures I'd gathered from the dragon's lair. "Did he come here to harm you?" Riftan looked at Maxi with a blank expression before he smiled. "He's not that crazy. He just never thought I'd make it from Drakium to Anatole in 8 days. He made a grave miscalculation." Maxi remembered Ruth telling her that it would take at least 10 days for Riftan to arrive in Anatole. Riftan had arrived 2 days earlier than the sorcerer's prediction. Or rather, I arrived at just the right moment. If I had come a day or 2 later, things would have been much worse. He had 3 high-ranking knights and a magical device with him. It wouldn't have taken them long to get past our defenses. Magical device? His family heirloom. The device contains powerful fire magic, and that's what he used to destroy the gate. Riftan's face suddenly turned cold. He probably thought he had a chance since our knights were away. If he had succeeded and managed to flee back to Lividon, it wouldn't have been easy to track him down. Hearing the wrath in Riftan's voice, Maxi put a hand on his arm. Rob Midahas may have been foolish, but harming a nobleman could easily lead to conflict. Riftan gazed down at her fearful eyes and smiled bitterly. "I should have beheaded him and hung his head outside the castle walls to set an example. But as you said, I'd hate to leave you again for war." Then, smiling, Riftan left a trail of kisses from her shoulders to her cheeks. "I shall send a message to his father as soon as the sun rises tomorrow. I'll demand compensation and tell him to rein in his son." Maxi breathed a sigh of relief. His damp hair emitted a sweet fragrance. Recalling Ruth's comment about the knight's strong dislike for floral scents, Maxi stifled a laugh. "What are you laughing at?" Riftan looked at her questioningly. "Your hair smells like roses." Riftan blushed. "I figured you'd like me to smell nice." As Riftan began fidgeting with his damp hair, Maxi's chest tightened. "I suppose it's not becoming of a man." Riftan sniffed himself sheepishly. Maxi gazed at him silently for a moment. In the early days, his crude language and imposing figure had suggested to her that he might turn out to be as violent as her father. She had not in her wildest dreams expected to find her fearsome husband so endearing one day, then raised her tired body to plant a soft kiss on his cheek. Riftan's entire body stiffened. Blushing, Maxi planted another kiss on his jaw. "It does smell nice. It's not unbecoming of a man. I'll have to use this soap for the rest of my days then." Riftan pulled her toward him by the waist and kissed her, then gently squeezed her tender chest with his hand. Startled, Maxi pushed him away. "We've already. Isn't this what you wanted?" I wasn't trying to datch. She had kissed him only out of an overwhelming rush of affection. She had had no intention of seducing him. But Riftan ignored her and began to strip off his clothes, kissing her more passionately. "You fanned the flames yourself, Maxi." Riftan lowered himself onto her. Her body went weak at the sound of his whisper. She wound her arms around his neck and pulled him closer. It was well past noon by the time Maxi awoke the next day. With Luddy's assistance, she bathed and got dressed. Riftan had left at the break of dawn to deal with the intruders, and Maxi worried that he had not had sufficient rest after his long journey. Maxi left the room with a warm shawl draped over her shoulders. Crisp air flowed in through the open windows. As she made her way down the corridor, her eyes roved over the clean windowsills and new carpets stretching across the floor. Did the Lord say anything about the castle? Maxi asked Luddy's, who was walking just behind her. Luddy's looked uncomfortable. I'm sure he hasn't had the time to look over the castle properly because of all the commotion yesterday. I see. Seeing the look of disappointment on Maxi's face, Luddy's flashed one of her rare smiles and quickly added, but the knights were astonished. When they came into the great hall for dinner last night, they said that the place had grown magnificent beyond measure. Really? Luddy's nodded vigorously. The servants stopped polishing the windows to greet her. Maxi nodded at them and headed toward the dining hall. Ruth and 3 Remdragon knights looked up from their lunch when she entered. Maxi froze. Unless there happened to be a special occasion, the knights usually had their breakfast and lunch in their quarters. As such, she had never encountered them in Riftan's absence, and she found herself standing in place, blinking. Are your injuries all right, my lady? Ruth looked Maxi up and down with bleary eyes, yawning while running his fingers through his perpetually messy hair. Seeing the way Sir Riftan reacted, I thought you'd broken a bone, but you seem all right. It was just a scratch. I figured as much, Ruth answered flatly, pulling out the chair next to him. Please have a seat, my lady. And before Maxi could protest, Ruth instructed a servant to bring her food. Having lost her chance to leave, she glanced over at the knights' faces before taking her seat. Silence filled the hall. Maxi anxiously waited for her meal to be served. When the silence became too much to bear, she asked, "Where is Riftan?" "He is at the gates, checking on the progress of the repairs," Ruth grumbled, tearing off a piece of bread with his teeth. "He has summoned blacksmiths and craftsmen to build a steel gate. And not only that, he also wants a defensive magical device installed. He's always been fixated on the defense of the castle, but that dim-witted noble has made it worse." "The safer the better," Maxi said brightly, relieved to have a topic to discuss. Ruth scowled. "It has fallen on me to create the said device. I'll be worked to death at this rate." Maxi was saved from having to think of a reply when a servant placed a bowl of chicken soup and freshly baked bread in front of her. Though she knew nothing about how magical devices were made, she could surmise from his griping that it was an onerous task. She put the spoon to her mouth, rolling her eyes as Ruth groaned and tore at his hair. Suddenly, Ruth raised his head with a jerk. "My lady, can you do basic arithmetic?" Maxi nearly choked on her soup. Ruth's usually lethargic gray eyes regarded her with expectation, unnerving her. If she disclosed that arithmetic was not her strong suit, the knights, who already regarded her with little respect, would think even less of her. But if she said that she could perform basic arithmetic, she was sure Ruth would assign her a grueling task. Unable to make up her mind, she avoided Ruth's eyes by gulping down her soup. Ruth leaned in to place himself in her line of vision, narrowing his eyes as if he were trying to prick her conscience. "Is this how you repay kindness, my lady? I'm not skilled enough to be of help to a sorcerer. I know that you're no mathematician. I ask only because I need all the help that I can get." At that, Maxi lost any inclination she had had to help Ruth. Noticing the change in her expression, Ruth began to pout like a hurt child. "I hope you haven't forgotten the aid I gave you in your hour of need, my lady. I really don't think I'm qualified." What Maxi most dreaded was the caustic remarks that she would have to endure if she agreed to help. She had never met anyone quite as critical as Ruth. Her determination to avoid his eyes, however, did not seem to deter him. "You'll be managing simple records and calculations. I'd say you're more than qualified for that." Enough of that. One of the knights who had been pretending not to hear the exchange intervened. "You're being disrespectful to her ladyship." Ruth ignored him and continued to look at her imploringly. Maxi knew that if she refused, the ill-tempered sorcerer would likely accuse her of being an ingrate at every opportunity. With that thought in mind, Maxi reluctantly nodded, and Ruth's face broke into a grin. "You have my eternal gratitude." He passed her a potato from his plate in thanks. "I see you've become quite close," Sir Heberon said, scratching the back of his head. The brawny knight had been quietly listening to their conversation. Maxi hesitated before saying, "Ruth provided the valuable advice on the castle refurbishments." "Ahem, I see," Sir Heberon said, smiling awkwardly. Maxi's heart sank at his disinterest. "The castle doesn't look half bad," he added after a long silence. "Oh, thank you." Heberon shifted his gaze uncertainly. He evidently found the conversation just as uncomfortable as she did. Although they had met a long while ago, they had never formally exchanged introductions, and she knew his name only because she had heard snatches of conversation among the knights. Silence fell over the room once more, and Maxi's eyes shifted restlessly. "Let's go if you're done eating." A moment later, the knights stood up, nodded their salutations, and left the dining hall. Maxi stared at her soup despondently. "There isn't much we can do about their attitude," said Ruth. The Remdragon knights suffered greatly because of Duke Croiso. Maxi flinched and turned around. Ruth languidly dipped a piece of bread in the rich stew and brought it to his mouth before continuing. The dragon campaign brought great fame and honor to the order. But if fortune hadn't been on our side, or if it hadn't been for Sir Riftan, we would have lost many lives. The red dragon was a formidable foe, and many nearly didn't make it back alive. Sir Riftan was at the forefront of it all, dancing with death. Maxi's blood ran cold, but Ruth's voice remained as calm as if he had just been commenting on the weather. The Duke pushed the campaign onto Sir Riftan despite being fully aware of the dangers. Sir Riftan received a wife in exchange for his troubles, but even she failed to fulfill her duties. But until that moment, she had remained convinced that she was the one who had been abandoned. Maxi's lips quivered as she saw it. Riftan had been forced to marry her, and he had left her without a word because he had never wanted her. But Maxi knew that this would only sound like an excuse to the knights. The color drained from her face. That is how the knights have seen it till now. Ruth lowered his spoon with an impassive face. "I truly didn't know that he wanted me here. The knights who were sent to escort you were turned away at the gates. I was never told about it." Her voice came out as a whisper. "Did it never occur to you to come to Anatole yourself with your father's knights?" Her father would never have allowed it, nor would his knights have agreed to accompany her. In fact, it had never occurred to her that going to her husband's castle was a possibility. Lost for words, Maxi hung her head. Ruth shrugged and dropped the matter. "Well, there's no use bemoaning what has already passed. You're Sir Rifton's wife, regardless of what the knights think. Pay them no heed unless they insult you." It was unclear from his nonchalant tone whether he had intended to console her or whether he merely wished to end the conversation, and so Maxi simply gave a weak nod. Ruth rose from his chair. "Then I shall look forward to your ladyship's help in the library in the coming days," Ruth said lightly, rolling his shoulders left and right before exiting the dining hall. She left the dining hall. She listlessly walked down the hall, wondering whether everyone else saw her as a shameless woman who had neglected her duties after her husband had left for a deadly campaign. If they did, they most likely resented her charade of acting like the lady of the castle now that he had returned a hero. As she recalled how Rob Midahas had mocked her openly at the gates, what little confidence she had gained over the past weeks was shaken. How could Anatolians be expected to respect her after the miserable spectacle she had made of herself? "My lady," Maxi turned around when she heard Luddy's polite voice. "The Lord has asked for you. Isn't he at the northern gates?" "He has just returned. He's in the garden." Maxi ran outside before Luddy's could finish his sentence. She passed the pavilion to reach the stairs from where she could see the garden bustling with servants moving chests into the castle. Her eyes widened at the endless stream of chests being unloaded from the enormous horse-drawn wagon standing at the entrance to the garden. She walked past the servants and cautiously made her way down the stairs. In front of the wagon, Riftan was talking to two merchants dressed in the attire of the southern continent. Sensing her presence, he looked over his shoulder. Maxi. Maxi ran to him like a puppy answering her master's call. Here. With a faint smile on his lips, Riftan took the reins of a strikingly beautiful mare from the merchant and tugged lightly. The mare obediently trotted forward. Patting the mare's long, graceful neck, he handed Maxi the reins. Maxi stood blinking in surprise. Do you not like her? Sorry. Riftan placed the reins in Maxi's hands. I said I'd bring gifts, didn't I? Wide-eyed, Maxi looked from Riftan's impassive face to the mare's gentle one. Sensing her bewilderment, Riftan pulled her closer and placed her hand on the mare's muzzle. Maxi stroked its golden mane with shaking hands. In response, the horse gently rubbed its muzzle against her hand. My horses are too big and wild for you, but you should be able to handle this one. She's young but well-trained. She's lovely, Maxi murmured, enthralled. She's yours now. Riftan's lips curled up into a smile. This is the most wonderful gift I've ever received. The mare let out a charming snort. Maxi admired its long, slender legs and brilliant black eyes. Its balanced proportions and glossy mane indicated that it was a fine breed. Can I really have her? Riftan frowned slightly. I told you she's yours. No one else here would ride such a dainty horse. The mare gave a great snort as if she had understood him. Maxi laughed softly and stroked its ears. Riftan tilted his head, keeping his burning gaze on Maxi. Do you like her? I do. I truly do. Thank you, Riftan. Riftan lowered his head to kiss Maxi. When she took a step back in surprise, Riftan put his arm around her shoulders. Let's go up to our room. I have more gifts waiting for you. There's more? Riftan pointed to the chests being unloaded from the wagon. Every one of those is filled with gifts for you. Maxi's jaw dropped. There were enough chests to fill an entire room. I've instructed the servants to bring them up to our room.
Come.